Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name is Renee McKenna, and I bring my 30-plus years as a recovering addict and ex-crazy person turned therapist and shamanic healer to bring you snackable teachings on spirituality, psychology, and all things personal growth. And today I want to talk about life transitions. There are, from many different psychological and developmental perspectives, different ways to understand the different stages of our life, and that each of them are a healthy part of our development. Each bring their own challenges and growth opportunities, but they also bring opportunities to get stuck or move into a more destructive mode rather than constructive if we don't learn the lessons or take the value out of really deeply living each of these stages. So, what are the lessons? What are the opportunities that these different life stages offer to us? We have infancy, toddlerhood, we have early childhood and then later childhood, we have adolescence and young adulthood, we have middle adulthood, older adulthood, and then old age. And each of them offer opportunities, again, for growth and development. Each have their own kind of stage or phase that they provide for us to grow and develop in this human life. And I think when we live our life deeply, whether we have children or don't have children, whether we work or we don't work, whether we have physical or mental or emotional or relational issues, and all of us have all of those things. Even some of us might not get to complete all of those stages. Some might die at much earlier stages. To trust that our own soul's journey is appropriate for what we have come here to learn and how we are participating in our own unique way in this larger system that we're a part of. And so that's what I'm going to talk about. And I'll look forward to hearing what you have to say about the age, stage, and developmental dynamics that you're in right now. And so one of the things about moving through these different life stages in our development is that the old way of doing things doesn't work anymore. And it can be really disorienting. It can be confusing. We can feel out of balance. There's like an identity crisis. Well, whether it's a crisis or just a challenge, there's definitely a change happening. And the more we can submit ourselves to these natural changes, the more flow and the easier our transition will go. I think some of the trick is to know what's being called for in these different stages. Because again, if we do what we always did, we're going to get what we always got. And acting like an adolescent in early adulthood or acting like an infant as a toddler, though lots of us do that, some of us act like an infant when we're in late adulthood. Those things cause developmental difficulties and don't allow us to get the benefit out of each of these stages that each offer us different challenges and different opportunities to grow and develop. So Eric Erikson is an American child psychoanalyst known for his theory on psychosocial development of human beings. And he actually coined the phrase identity crisis. He was born in Germany in the early 1900s and died in Harwich, Massachusetts, down on Cape Cod, which I'm actually going to have an opportunity to visit this month. Not Harwich, but I'm going to the Cape. Very excited about that. Anyway, I think Erikson has a very solid approach to understanding the development of the human psyche over a full lifetime. He talked about the idea that there's kind of a task or a crisis aligned with each of these ages and stages. And ultimately, there's a virtue that gets developed or a healthy aspect or perspective of ourself that can come out of each of these stages if they're well lived. And at any given point, life being as imperfect and unique and complicated as it is, we may have underdevelopment in these different stages. And for me, that's what good therapy and spiritual practice is about, is to kind of go back and redo what we missed earlier in our life, as well as being able to navigate whatever's being called from us in our present circumstance in whatever stage and task is being developed right now. And so the first stage of human development is the infant stage, which is from birth to about 18 months. And that's when children develop trust or mistrust on a very basic level. And this is learned by infants based on how well their caregivers meet their basic needs and respond to their cry. If an infant cries out to be fed, the parent can either meet this need by feeding and comfort the baby or not meet this need by ignoring the infant. And when their needs are met, infants learn that relying on others is safe. And when their needs go unmet, infants grow up to be less trusting. And according to Erikson, the virtue that's developed out of this trust or mistrust on its most basic level is hope. So when their needs are met, infants learn that relying on others is safe. And when their needs go unmet, infants grow up to be less trusting. The second stage of human development is toddlerhood. And the task or crisis is autonomy versus shame and doubt. And another way to think of the second stage is independence versus dependence. And children are still responding to their caregivers at this stage. If caregivers encourage them to be independent and explore the world on their own, then toddlers will grow up with a sense of independence and self-trust. And if the caregivers are helicopter parents or encourage dependence because of their own wounding or unmet needs, then the toddlers will grow up with less confidence in their own abilities. So if caregivers are over concerned with safety and protecting the children, even in an area that's safe, then it instills doubt in children about their own abilities and the safety of the world. And the virtue developed in this toddler stage of 18 months to 3 years is a healthy self-will. And the third stage, according to Erikson, is preschool years. It's initiative versus guilt. I would say assertiveness versus hiding. And each of these stages kind of builds on the next one, or at least interacts with it in this really complicated way that creates each of us to be a unique person. So if we're able to develop some autonomy, self-confidence, and self-esteem in stage 2, then we're able to explore the world, to initiate play and social interactions with others, and develop our interpersonal skills. If we're overly restricted from exploring the world by parental control or criticism, then it's easy to develop guilt or be overly focused on pleasing others and not take risks because of fear of failure. This is a really common place for an aspect of inner criticism that's like a self-protective device to develop itself somewhere between 3 and 7 years old. And the good news from a spiritual psychology perspective is that we can go back using inner journey work to help clear, empower, and repattern any of these stages, all the way back to birth, and even before that. The fourth stage of life is ages 5 to 12, middle childhood. And this is a time when children begin to compare themselves with others. Erikson calls it industry versus inferiority. I would call it accomplishment versus inferiority. And the virtue developed is a sense of self-competency, or being good at stuff, noticing what you're good at and what you're not good at, noticing what other people are good at and what they're not good at. And this is a stage where there can be a lot of bullying if children are different than the rest of their peers. And there's a lot of superiority, inferiority, a lot of games are played that are win-lose, a lot of competitions in sports of who's good and who's not. And some of these ideas of self-esteem can get really deeply embedded and become unconscious ways that we start to view the world, and also our ideas of how other people view us that may or may not be true. In the fifth stage, adolescence, between 13 and 21 years, they give us a long time to be adolescents, is about developing a sense of self, identity versus confusion. In fact, adolescence is where the term identity crisis originated, and for a really good reason. Adolescence is all about developing this sense of self. And teens who can clearly identify who they are and what they like often grow up with stronger goals and self-knowledge than teens who struggle to break free of their parents' or their peers' influences. Now, often children will turn away from their parents' influence and be deeply influenced by their peers and social group. And I think that's a normal, healthy development as long as we continue along these ages and stages. And again, it's very easy to get stuck. And a lot of people stop developing at the adolescent stage. And a lot of the terrible teen experience that many parents have is the children necessarily breaking free of their parents' influence with parents that are unable or unwilling to let go and let their kids make their own mistakes and learn from their own actions. And as we move through each of these stages successfully or unsuccessfully, Erikson believed that we develop a healthy personality, that failing to develop the healthy attributes of any of these challenges can lead to difficulty moving forward in the future and have negative impacts on our sense of self and personality, that we feel inadequate and have this stuck feeling. And I think all humans have that on some level and some age and stage. And this is an interesting way to look at it because we can look at where that stuckness is. And I do that through inner journey work and hypnotherapy to actually notice where that stuck feeling is in the body. And it will lead us right back to the age and stage that we were at when that stuckness happened. And using spiritual psychology tools, we can work to bring those aspects of ourselves into present time and reparent them from our own healthy adult ego state now. That's what shamanic soul retrieval is about. Inner child work, very, very powerful in repatterning developmental issues at these different stages of a human lifetime. Lack of healthy identity development or role confusion in teenage years can lead to a lack of sense of purpose or understanding our role in the world. A deep unsurety about ourselves and our future and the people around us. We might have a poor social group or a non-existent one that seems to be a little bit of a crisis now post-COVID. And again, this idea of an identity crisis. Who am I? What's my purpose here? And that may follow us into adult life. I know it certainly did for me. And that's where spiritual practice and the tools of spiritual psychology for me and the 12 steps have been invaluable in reorienting me toward a sense of larger purpose based on spiritual principles of personal development, trust in God, and service to others. So the sixth stage, according to Erikson, is 18 to 40 years old, and I would divide that up into 3 different sections myself. That's just way too big of a period of time. But this is the householder stage, the creation of personal and intimate relationships, and it's definitely dependent on success in stage 5. And the challenges here is long-term commitments such as work responsibilities, relationships, and family. The creation of healthy and happy relationships that are secure and enduring. Love is the ultimate success during this stage, and we crave meaningful and lasting relationships. Challenges at this stage are about forming these appropriate bonds or avoiding intimacy altogether. Loneliness, isolation, depression, and a poor sense of self. Becoming emotionally isolated or unavailable and not having a lot of committed relationships or friendships is the challenge of this stage of early adulthood. So I would subdivide that stage actually into 2 parts. I think 18 to 25 at this place where the world is incredibly complex is late adolescence. Most people are going to college now and don't launch until they're in their 20s. I know for me, 23, 24 was a huge developmental shift out of adolescence. It's when I got clean and sober, realized I couldn't act like a street punk anymore, not unless I wanted to go to prison. So that late adolescence time of really figuring out who we are in relation to the world and how we want to live feels like an important subdivision to give us more time than just turning 18. I get a bunch of 18-year-olds in my life right now, and there's no way they're ready for stage 6. And then I'd say 25 to 40 is early adulthood. It's the time to make relationship choices, if you're going to have children or not. Often people are making career choices during that time. I know I didn't really determine what my career choice was until I was 35 or 36. We put all these pressures on these young kids who are barely figuring out who they are to make these larger life choices. We have a lot more time here to go through this whole life cycle of being a human than most of us think. So the task or the crisis of early adulthood is intimacy versus isolation. And the virtue that's developed is love for self and for others. The 7th stage, ages 40 to 65, what I would call mature adulthood, is about developing care for ourselves, others, and the larger system. And the task or the crisis is creativity versus stagnation. This is kind of the summertime of our life, being aware of the impact that we have on others, making a mark on the world, nurturing things outside of our own self. The idea of creating or providing generativity, generating things through our work, through our family, through our relationships. What do we bring to the world? Are we a productive and valuable member of society? Or do we feel unproductive, disillusioned, disconnected? This is a time rampant with addiction, when we can feel stagnated, that we've had little impact on the world, that we have crappy relationships. And again, this is where we always have an opportunity to heal and grow and evolve from where we are right now. And the pain points that we have, if we look deeply at them, point exactly to where we need to grow and evolve and redo what didn't get done well the first time. And the final stage, from Erikson's point of view, is old age, or what I would call the wisdom stage. And it's integrity versus despair. And this is from age 65 or 70 up until our passing. And most people slow down, become less productive, embrace what they have become and accomplished. And if there's a sense of success, we've achieved some goals, found happiness, have feelings of integrity and wholeness. And if we have embraced the wisdom of life, we can pass with peace and a sense of fulfillment. And if there's despair or regret over things left unfinished, mistakes we've made, we can become bitter about the past or even the present and frightened about the coming end of our life. And we can see that in the generally 2 camps of old people, the bitter, grumpy, resentful ones, constricted and full of fear, or the peaceful, expansive, sometimes even almost angelic energy of the aged who have lived well and die well. Now, these are general stages because technically I'm approaching the wisdom age when I should be becoming less productive, but I'm actually ramping up to do what feels to me like the most productive work of my life. And I've had to go back and a lot of redos for me in every stage. There was a lot of stage development failure. So I guess I'm a poster child for being able to redo. And I think that's what I feel like my work is now, that I feel healthier and more solid than I ever have in just about every area of my life, that I can bring this out to others, that they can have that experience of healing, hope, fulfillment, and possibility that's come to me. So I'm in a pause right now in this stage of moving out of being an active parent and into this place of wanting to bring what I have into the world. And the question is how to do that. And I feel like I've been putting in a lot of effort, and then there's a time to stop. It's like planting the fields, and you can't dig the seeds up to see if they're growing. Got to give it some water and some sunshine and make room for the goddess to do her mystery, because I know the value of the spiritual psychology work. I'm passionate about bringing it out, but I do feel like there's a shifting development within myself that, as in all stage change, is a bit of a mystery and an unknown because I haven't been here before. And so I got this ending of a phase and the beginning of another phase. A lot of people are retiring at my age. I'm actually probably moving into being full power. I hate the term crone and a lot of the other words that are used for women moving into my stage. I kind of have been embracing the idea of moving into my queen phase. That feels much better for me than being a crone. Crones have bad hair, I think. So, and I really like to have good hair. So I'll keep you posted on my own stage development, and I would love to hear about yours. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to find out how a block of spiritual psychology work might help you in your age and stage development, shoot me an email, info@reneemckenna.com. Thanks to all my supporters on Patreon and through this podcast. Blessings on your path until we meet again. This is Renee McKenna for Spiritual Psychology.